Yes.
So without further ado, here's Mr. Mike Lee.
Hello, everybody. So, you could just go to the next slide. So he's Shelton back there is our clicker, and then so that's what we'll be talking to him. So, just as maybe a little bit more of a background about myself, I spent a decade over at Fox and Warner Brothers, and I was the VP of Technology Strategy and that portion of it. The other part about my background was really on those innovative startups. So I was with a company called Yekra, where we were innovating the digital distribution straight to the consumers. That's where I met Jake of Sony, was through that contact. At Fox, I met Ted and Scott, and we'll introduce them in a sec. And through this process, a pleasure to meet Mark as well. So what we found out was such a small-knit community. And when we were doing our prep, it literally felt like we're at a bar, and we're just like joking around. So it was very lightweight as well. So along with that, I used to work over at Netscape. And what's funny, and this is where I felt old, in some of my classes, I'm like, who knows about Netscape? There's some classes, nobody knows about Netscape. I was like, yeah, it was a free ISP or something, I don't know. So, so in terms of the panel discussion, I mean, I'm so excited about this. And this is just really about the current and future state of digital distribution. But the idea for this panel came about because, well, we have like a mature and innovating science on the supply chain side. The center represents that and all that. And there's also digital distribution on the digital side. And on the studio side, it's really, these are the innovators. And these are the people that, they come with completely different backgrounds, but they got into similar roles in digital distribution. So the question was, is there a linkage between the two, where we could get the knowledge and ideas on the physical supply chain side, and as they turn more digital, could that align with the digital side? So this was the first dialogue to really discuss that, and we're just fortunate to have people that literally developed the strategy, imagining the PowerPoint, got the funding, then they said, why don't you run it? They ran it so well, and they owned the P&L portion of it, right? So everything you touch in digital, probably they touched a lot of it from their respective studios. So I just get like chills, thinking about this panel itself. You could actually go to the next slide. So before I get there, I want to say a disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed in this panel are those of the panelists and do not necessarily reflect the policy or position of their respective organizations. I think we have a PR person in here. Was that correct? So is there any press in the room? Okay, great. Okay, so with that, I would like to introduce Jake Winett. He's the VP of Consumer Services and Advanced Platforms at Sony. I mean, he has tremendous amount of experience, but I think with him, you have to realize usually the studios we sell it to Walmart or other distribution channels, and we may not have the direct contact and knowledge. But he's innovating in getting that knowledge about the analytics behind what are the consumer experience and all that. And he is, I feel, is one of the new generations that's coming in. It isn't the old way of doing things, but just innovating, et cetera. So with that, I actually wanted to ask him to just talk about his journey, what he does, and then kind of journey got there.
Well, and thanks, Mike, and thank you for hosting this, and very, very excited to be here. So my journey, I'll try to keep it short. I started as a projectionist in movie theater in high school, and now I'm here. For me, I've always had one foot in entertainment and one foot in technology. I was film production undergrad, and then did my graduate in business, and I've always found
at
a way
USC.
To Woo! Marshall. I almost wore my USC Hawaiian shirt today. So I've always kind of had one foot in both worlds and found a way to kind of fill both those passions for media and entertainment and technology innovation. And so kind of sort of been one circumstance after another of just kind of being in the right place at the right time. And so I'm really excited about my opportunity now. And it's the Wild West, but that's what makes it fun. So.
I call him an adrenaline junkie. But he was also from Microsoft and then transitioned to so there was a product side vendor into this role. Next, I want to introduce Ted Cittadine. He's the SVP of Digital Distribution. So I actually met him like years ago, and then we started having lunch. And I remember asking him about iTunes and how that works. And it actually gave me a completely different perspective on the way studios operate. Because we're like, you know, what do you want? I mean, I thought we would be so restrictive on offering content, but it turned out we actually want to experiment, and we really want to know what are the fair business models with consumers. So that was just eye-opening, and then I remember just hassling him like every month to like get together and have lunch and just kind of pick his brain. He's one of the folks where, you know, obviously he's smart and all that, and business strategy. He built the deck, got it funded, got it running, and then he's like running the whole thing now. So when you think about just an idea and how it's growing and booming, that's what I mean by, I think these are literally the true practitioners within the industry. So with that, if you could tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Great, thanks. This is actually the first time I've ever been on USC's campus, and I'm wondering why I never applied here for undergrad. Big mistake, one of my many. So yeah, Senior Vice President, Digital Distribution at Fox. I manage our digital licensing business, so I negotiate our output deals with iTunes, Amazon Instant Video, DirecTV, Comcast, all the new ways that people can rent and buy movies. It's been a great business. I joined Fox 9 years ago, so I started out after undergrad in investment banking, small cap corporate debt. Realized I did not want to be an investment banker going forward, so at the ripe old age of 23, I went to business school, came out, worked in corporate mergers and acquisitions in the new media space, and then 9 years ago started at Fox in our corporate strategic planning group, which if you guys are in the MBA program is kind of a way for MBAs or investment bankers. It's a halfway house to join entertainment, decompress, and then go on and do other things. But Mike's right, one of the first projects I had was to build our digital supply chain business, and then the second project I had was to analyze our digital distribution strategy, and then I went over and managed the business about 3 years later, and I'm here today. Glad to be here.
Great. If we go to the next slide. So next we have Scott Phelan. He is SVP.
Actually, it's Phelan, but that's okay.
And I've known him for
Known
this
each
many
other
years.
for 10
He
years
never
now.
corrected. We're always drinking, so it was kind of like a slurry. You know?
He's the slurry.
So he's actually the SVP of Sales and Distribution Technologies, supporting Warner Brothers theatrical, television, home entertainment, consumer products, etc. He has done so much across some of the major iconic brands of the industry that, and even that portion of it, the fact that we have the consumer-facing direct, we have the P&L distribution, the licensing side, and we have Scott, who actually, you know, in terms of systems and the core processes that support this. So we have like a very good complement over there. With that, I want to, about your journey.
Sure. So, Scott Phelan, I graduated from USC in 1990 in the graduate program. Started off in the consulting world, technology consulting, working for Anderson Consulting in the old days, now Accenture. Did about 5 years of consulting and got the bug about entertainment. Did a couple of projects in entertainment and didn't look back. Knew I wanted to stay in Southern California. It's a great industry. Sounds like I'm actually trying to sell you on entertainment. And worked, left consulting, decided to start a family and actually be in Southern California. Worked for, Mike's being very nice, a couple of different companies. Technicolor for physical film distribution, so physical supply chain. Also Universal Studios for about 10 years. Fox, where I met both of these gentlemen, running the digital supply chain. And then now at Warner Brothers, been there about 4 years. And essentially, out of the $12.8 billion of revenue that Warner Brothers makes, I'm responsible for the technology that supports about 12.5 of it. So it's the growth engine, it's the monetary engine, which is always a good place to be.
I want a cut of your bonus.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Scott. Next up, Mark. So he is, what's great, so we have on the client side and on the consulting side, a lot of times there's new ideas and what are the trends kind of across the board. And Mark is played an important role in terms of infusing new business media ideas, new revenue structures, and all of those things. And I guess with that, if you could just talk to us about your journey.
Okay, sure. So I didn't go to USC, but I started, went to the University of Washington, and one of the nice things about being from the UW and living in Southern California is I don't get into the USC, UCLA thing, come football time.
He
But
tries to be the UN, right?
yeah, no, it's kind of great.
Switzerland.
So got my undergrad in accounting and computer science, BA, BS, and then went to grad school down here, went to Pepperdine, sorry SC. You know, my journey really started, similar to Scott, you know, I started off in technology, and that's really where, you know, my roots are. About 10 years ago is when my supply chain journey started, and I'm so humbled because there are just so many experts in this room that are so deep in supply chain. I mean, I'm looking in the back of the room, I recognize 3 people who've written great books on supply chain. I mean, there's just some real experts in this room. My journey started about 10 years ago when I was asked by a major studio to really tackle this challenge, look at physical supply chain, look at digital supply chain, lay out the strategy, lay out the implementation, and I spent about 7 years and lived and worked in 20 different countries with that company as we completely revamped their entire supply chain. This is for theatricals, for TV, for cable TV network as well. So it was an awesome experience for me. One where I learned a lot. I got a chance to work with a lot of great people, like the people on this board. And as a student, I would say, you know, you're kind of focused on the right area. You can have a very deep focus from a back office perspective. You can go to the front office, look at monetization, consumer models, you know, different things like that. I've never seen the pace of change like I see now, you know, in the industry. So it's a pleasure to be here and happy to share the perspective that I have.
And one of the other common themes is you have kids, right?
I do, one.
Yes, one. So we're all parents, and our kids might be 19 to 4 to 7, 14 months, right? So what it is there's a reality of we want to create business models that actually works, and then where our kids and new generation will consume them. So it's a kinder, friendlier studio and model. So with that, let's go to the next slide. So the topic is current and future state of digital distribution. The way we're gonna do this, I actually outsourced some of the topics. So each one of the panelists agreed to be the lead on a certain topic. So we're gonna first start off with physical to digital, the evolution of digital. And it is an evolution of dance or evolution of rap or those type of things, but you know, maybe Scott will dance for us or sing for us later. No.
Don't think you want to see that.
Yeah.
And when Mike says that we signed up for it, Mike said, Scott, you're going to do this, right? Okay, apparently I am. So we talked about the transition from physical to digital. When you think about a movie studio, at least of the 6 major movie studios, they have really a bunch of different businesses, which is an interesting thing about a studio is that it's not just very focused on a single business. There's generally a theatrical component, a television component, home entertainment, Blu-ray, DVD, EST, VOD. Sometimes a theme park group. I actually ran the theme parks for Universal Studios Hollywood. Ran the technology supporting them for about 3 years. It's kind of an interesting when you talk about a true physical supply chain. You got people walking through the door. There's a physical studio lot that you've got to manage. Sometimes there's studio tours. Lots and lots of different businesses. And what we've seen over time is really the transition from physical to digital. So I don't know if folks have been keeping up with it, but the old theatrical business. I said I used to work for Technicolor, and the average movie was on these 2,000-foot reels. It was 35 millimeter film. Average 2 cans weighed about 55 pounds. You'd have to ship them all over the country. And you get them to one theater, and you have to get them in there in time, and they, you know, put them together.
I was putting those movies together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Splicing and the whole
Yeah.
thing that you had to do.
Yeah.
And timed it perfectly so that reel 1 went into reel 2. And that went from a purely physical business of literally 55 pounds, millions and millions of pounds every year, or almost every film, being shipped around to digital, where now you're in theory doing it either over the air or through the internet, but oftentimes it's really physical hard drives that you're sending. You send them early enough, it gets on a projector, it's a pristine experience. So when you go to a movie and you see the 100th showing, it's identical to the first showing. If you've ever been to kind of a late run, 8 weeks into a film, and it's, garbled, and you see those streaks, and you're like, oh gosh, that doesn't happen anymore. The US is marked, probably, may even know more than I do, it's 97, 98% digital.
Almost
I
all
think, at this
digital,
point.
yeah, and
Yeah.
expected the next 18 months to be 100%.
And,
Yeah.
and it's, what they're doing is really putting the mom and pops out of business, the ones that really can't make that leap. So that's on the physical side. Ted talked a little bit about the digital supply chain. So when you think about the media going to a broadcaster, again, physical media used to be tapes, Betacam, Digibeta, SR, HD cam, all the different formats that you'd physically ship, and you'd have to track them, and they go through customs. That's really all gone. It's maybe not all, mostly sent digitally these days. The television business, obviously, we've all seen the transitions and the cord cutting that's been going on there. So you've seen that real shift in the physical supply chain of the physical components of the business. Although it's still there, and people are still, believe it or not, buying DVDs and Blu-rays, it's still a huge part of our business. It is a declining part of the business, and you have to have that balance of still operating the old physical supply chain while taking advantage of the new digital supply chain. So you have to keep both going. You want to decrease your investments on the physical side, increase them on the digital side. But again, I think as either as a technology person or as a business person, understanding that and helping not just follow it, but drive some of those conversations is a huge deal. It's certainly something that's driving our entire industry right now. I, previous to this position, was in charge of everything for home entertainment, and love to see a show of hands of who has bought a DVD or Blu-ray in the last 6 months. That's pretty sad.
Okay, we're done here. No.
10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, it would have been nearly everybody would have raised their hand. And the studios at the time, we used to say, there was you were purchasing our product for, it was about $15 was the price point. Now it's rental. So here's, raise your hand if you've rented digitally, either VOD or owned it through EST, something in the last 6 months. So there's the transition. So the economics of a studio going from, I can sell you, and we used to joke at Universal, I can put any piece of crap on a DVD. I had the first 6 seasons of Magnum PI. I got them for free. I wouldn't have paid for them, and I never opened them. I ended up giving away to something else. And do I really need season number 7? But that transition from a physical sale of $15 to a rental of $2.99 to $3.99, maybe up to $4.99, that's really changing the economics of a studio. And a studio just needs to adapt to that and optimize and make sure our investments are aligned to that.
So do you guys have something more to add to that?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was going to say one thing. So, today is September 11th, which is a bit of an auspicious day. But on September 11th, 2001, I was with a company called Winett, and we were doing network delivery of files for productions. And we were trying to, start this as a business, and people were still shipping tapes and said, no, FedEx is fine. We can track it, the whole thing. Well, 9/11 happened, and what happened? All air traffic was shut down. All of a sudden, our phone was ringing off the hook saying, you need to help us. We need to be able to get files from Vancouver back to LA. And that really was kind of the start. And this is, this is 2001, and then carried on. And so we've seen this shift from, this physical supply chain business to transmitting things through the network. So, we worked on the Lord of the Rings project, where they had all of the digital files that were in New Zealand, and we were working on the visual effects. And we found that it was faster, even with the connectivity at the time, to send them over the network from New Zealand to LA than it was to put them on a plane and fly them and go through customs and everything like that. So I think that's the shift from, it's just the tried and true physical methods to, that digital delivery on the back end. But, it's interesting, and that was, almost 15 years ago. So.
Does anybody watch Colbert Report, or not Colbert Report, the new, where he took over for David
Late
Letterman?
night.
Late night, yeah.
Late night. Anybody watch that?
Yes.
So it opened on Tuesday night. Did you see the Wednesday night? they were 20 minutes away from not being able to air that episode. Because actually it was kind of the opposite of everything was digital. Their servers kept crashing.
Oh my goodness.
And they actually couldn't, they didn't have tape, so they couldn't actually send the file to CBS to broadcast. Those are the kinds of things where, you know, IT oftentimes gets a bad rap for being a utility, and when things don't work, that's the kind of stuff that it really could have crushed Colbert. He said he held his breath for 20 minutes or something like that. Pretty funny.
Maybe
And-
just to add on a couple thoughts. So it's really interesting to take a step back. I can imagine as a student, you know, graduation date looming, thinking about, you know, careers and options and things like that, to really consider, you know, what Scott just, you know, went through. If you were to look at no one can disclose specific studio numbers, but if you were to look at an average studio at one of the big five here in LA, they might spend $100 million 5 years ago on those distribution costs that Scott was talking about. So those reels that are, you know, let's say two, I know some studios that would actually break it up to 7 reels for piracy reasons. So, you know, your costs can be really, really high. And so now you're in this world where you could do IP delivery, you could do the drive, the kind of brick, you know, delivery of a D-Cinema. And, you know, those costs are a fraction, you know, of what they were, right? In Europe, one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of new, very innovative businesses that are popping up around the piece that Scott, that's an add-on to what Scott's talking about, which is what's called the key renewal. And so when, you know, Scott and his team deliver a drive to, you know, the Odeon in, you know, London, let's say, that's not unlocked. They can't actually play it. They have to get like a booking and what's called a D-Cinema key, you know, to that theater for it to be able to play. Kind of laborious, kind of a little expensive
Yeah.
as well. And so these little vendors have been popping up, many of them startups, many of them college grads, who are just saying, look, we can actually do key renewals on the fly, you know, authenticate this stuff immediately for, you know, $10 a key, $12 a key, as opposed to hundreds of dollars per key. So there's, you know, when you really decompose this supply chain,
Yeah.
there's amazing, you know, opportunities, you know, for growth, for innovation, to kind of rethink how this works and take cost and put efficiency into the model.
And just to close off this topic, and then we're gonna segue into TED, and the next portion is that, like some of the other examples, like I remember Scott did a business case saying, here's how much money we're saving because of this digital asset management system. And that was part of the carbon neutral by 2010 News Corp initiative. So they quantified how much money and carbon that was saved by doing digital. And I'm not sure if you could tell the story. Was that Avatar in Russia?
Yeah, so Avatar came out in December 2009, December 17, 2009, a date forever in my memory. James Cameron, the director, is notorious for being very picky about having everything perfect. And Avatar was a brand new movie. It was going to cost, I don't know if it was the most expensive movie at the time, I think ever. And it had the potential to put Fox somewhat under. So he was very particular. It was 2 hours and 45 minutes. It was, I can't remember how many reels that would have been, 13 reels I think it is. And he was releasing reels one at a time. Well, we had to get it to Russia. And anybody ever send anything to Russia? Holy smokes, you need to send it now to be there for like next year. So the head of post-production was really worried about actually getting the movie to Russia in time because they had the bookings, they had to fulfill it. So we said, well,
And it was released like same exact time.
same day, yeah.
Same day as
So it's
every
day and
global.
date because Russia, it's a huge piracy market. So you have to get it out there and at least get 1 or 2 weekends out before you can buy it in the street for about $1. I'm not kidding, it actually is about $1. So we were able to figure out how to send it digitally. So it took us 5 days with the bandwidth at the time to send 4.5 terabytes of files. We actually flew somebody to Russia to sit by the server and watch the bits come in. I swear it was physical security. I can't remember the guy's JR flew there. And he's watching it all come in at a lab. They had armed security that at night when they were done with each of the drives, they put it in a vault, one of these big, turn the vault and the whole thing, and 2 armed guards on the outside. You're like, oh my God. They were able to get everything there. It took 5 days over Thanksgiving to get it there. Saved immense amounts of money. Since I'm not at Fox, I can disclose some of that. It was saving tens of millions of dollars a year by shipping every single movie over there. The good news on the whole thing is that from an outside of the U.S., U.S. opened at 77 million. The largest territory outside of U.S. was Russia, 21 million opening
Wow.
weekend, and it actually could not have gotten there without our technology. That's great. So
It was like overnight, they're like rushing to get, where's the server available?
I put that in my performance review for the year, absolutely.
So with that, hopefully that you get a sense of like the physical, the whys and what were the current issues. And with that, I want to transition over to Ted on really the changing media landscape that was occurring at a similar time as well. So Ted?
Sounds good. This is a topic we could spend about 3.5 weeks on, so
Yes.
I will be brief, but I just wanted to share, I've been managing the digital business at Fox for 7 years. And I was trying to think of the analogy. Those are not dog years, they're like interstellar years. So 1 hour is like 35 years in digital time. And the changes have been amazing. And it's just been interesting to be a part of it and to try and navigate that and to hopefully come out of the other side with a profitable business still intact. But when I started, 0 smartphones. Today, 800 million iPhones alone. We did a millennial research exercise. This may not be surprising to some of you with teenagers, but to me this was amazing that the average person under 25 spends 12 hours a day actively engaged with their smartphone. If you think someone's awake 16 hours, that's 75% of their waking time on this planet is engaged with a smartphone device, and that's just going to continue to grow.
Who engages with their smartphone first? That's the first thing you engage with every morning.
Is it spouse or smartphone?
Yeah, it's like,
It's a tough call. It was a PC-based
Bad breath,
world.
you know.
Exactly. PC-based world back then. Now we have 300 million iPads. The #1 usage of that device is video delivery, which is great. It's a new platform for us to deliver our content. Netflix was a small DVD by mail business. Now they have 50 million subscribers in the US alone. They stream 2 hours of content every day. They have wonderful original programming. And they use up about 40% of the peak bandwidth on any given night in the United States. So incredible, incredible change there. HBO was a good linear channel back in the day. Now they're unbundled, they're over the top with a beautiful HBO Now app that people can subscribe to without even having a cable subscription. Linear TV, unless you're watching Monday Night Football, I don't know anyone under the age of 80 that's sitting down to watch a program when it airs. That didn't happen 7 years ago, and that's revolutionized the way that our business works. And then finally, in our business, as Scott mentioned, DVD was king. There were 9,000 blockbusters back in the day, and VOD was just starting to emerge. Today, there are 0 blockbusters, 50,000 Redbox kiosks where people are still renting DVDs, and we have a robust digital business with iTunes and Amazon and Comcast and Google Play and all the other outlets where we have movies today. So I think we've done a good job as an industry historically, kind of navigating these new technology changes and changing our business and changing our economic model to make it work. Interesting to see if we can continue to do that because we have some real challenges but some real opportunities at the same time. So I think there's kind of 3 things I wanted to share of just maybe some opportunities and some challenges in the market. Wanted to get some input from the audience as well as to how the landscape is changing for them. Our goal is, again, just to stay relevant in this business. The first is just a deluge of content now in the business. Years ago, Star Wars revolutionized the box office, and that was an incredible thing back in 1976. HBO, when people could actually watch movies at home on a channel, that was such a revolutionary thing. Huge, huge success there. And DirecTV back in the day when you could get a movie on pay-per-view. When they had 1 million subscribers, we'd put a movie on pay-per-view, and 1 out of every 2 people would watch that movie. Incredible penetration.
Oh, wow.
Now, there's just so many choices, and a lot of this content is good stuff. I mean, Netflix has great originals, Hulu's in the original business with really high-quality things, HBO, Game of Thrones, unbelievable programming, FX, AMC, just a few to talk about. YouTube may not fit in the high-quality category necessarily, but extremely compelling for a particular audience. And all this just takes a lot of time away from our content business, and we have to differentiate our content and make it much more valuable relative to those really, really good options. So I think you'll see much, much more spectacle investment and marketing in terms of our biggest tentpoles, just continuing to get bigger like Avatar. That's really the kind of content that's going to stand apart relative to all the other good content. Again, Game of Thrones at $10 million an episode. You have to be better than that for people to want to watch it and pay money for it. So hopefully we'll continue to make content that resonates on a worldwide basis. The second is pay TV, and this is something that's totally changing. From some of the younger folks in the audience, is there anyone that does not subscribe to cable here? There we go. And I guess from some of the undergrads, are you planning when you graduate to subscribe to cable at $80 a month, or do you think Netflix and Hulu are going to do it for you, do it okay? I would imagine our focus groups and research say, cable's great, but for $80 a month, I'm much happier with Netflix and watching YouTube and some other video assets right there. If that's the case, so 20th Century Fox, or Fox as a conglomerate, we make 65% of our profits from that pay television ecosystem. So people subscribing to cable, licensing our content, that keeps the lights on today at Fox. If people stop doing that, we have a serious problem, and we're going to have to figure out how to make that work. And it's going to be a very big challenge. But my belief is that the market is this unstoppable force, and you have to give it what it wants, or else you're just going to become irrelevant. So you're going to see that cable bundle probably go away and look very small, or look a la carte, or something to get people give them a reason to subscribe and to watch our content. And hopefully we'll find a way to do that. I don't think we found one yet, but we're going to have to if we're going to stay relevant in that area. And then finally, international. I think that's a bright spot in our business. I just wanted to point out one interesting thing when I started in the entertainment business. We're the second biggest net exporting industry in the United States, next to agriculture. I would argue that our jobs are more value added than agriculture, so a very important part of the domestic economy. 75% today of our theatrical box office revenue is derived from overseas. That's continuing to grow by leaps and bounds.
When did it cross over?
Well, it crossed over years ago, and the delta is just getting larger and larger as we're seeing the U.S. box office tick up to 3% and the international box office exploding. So that will continue to grow. China alone is the #2 market right now for U.S. movies, which is amazing considering we have a quota of 35 pictures a year as an industry to get into the Chinese market. That is expected to beat the U.S. in terms of total box office performance in the next 3 years, which is not surprising. 100 screens a day are being built in China. The average Chinese person today watches 0.5 movies a year. We watch in the United States 4 movies a year, so that will continue to grow, and that market will be tremendously successful. Russia, Brazil, India as well, big box office markets. Our challenge is to make content that's compelling for those markets, because if you're in that territory, you want to watch things that are native to you and not native to someone else. And so you'll see our tent poles globally now are really designed for an international audience. And some things I got more in the business, I realized that's why in Skyfall, James Bond is spending half an hour of the movie in Macau. That makes sense. Or Die Hard 5 is filmed in Moscow. Or Edge of Tomorrow is filmed entirely in Europe, because we're making these movies not for us, but for everyone on a global basis. And that will certainly continue. So I think up until now, we've had a good job in kind of navigating technical challenges very well. We'll have tons of competition that we continue to have to evolve our product. And hopefully we do have some bright spots internationally where we can continue the success that we've had for the last 100 years or so.
Great. So I actually do have a question, though. So the music industry, right? So because of their low bandwidth requirements, I mean, the revenue from the CD sales, obviously, all that got reduced. But they offset that with live events, and so it basically became a commercial to music. What analogies do you think? How similar is the movie industry versus what happened to the music industry, and what do you think would be different? And this is just more opening up to the panel itself. Jake?
Go ahead.
No, please, Jake, go ahead.
You guys are too polite. Just like
You know, when iTunes came out and the iPod came out in 2001, and talk about relevancy, like Sony should have been the one that came up with the iPod, right? Because they had the Walkman. That was exciting and something that I really wanted to get into. And then you've kind of seen that shift. So everyone was very enthusiastic about iTunes, and people were buying songs, people were buying albums, and the music industry went, wait a minute, maybe this isn't so bad, because people now are actually, it's that kind of micro transaction, and people are sort of just buying stuff left and right. And then things were okay. But now we're seeing this shift kind of to the subscription model, and in the movie business and the home entertainment business, that's almost a bad word. Not that that isn't a.
It is a 4-letter word.
It's
It's SVOD, SVOD.
But that sort of you pay a small price and sort of all you can eat content something that the industry really like, well, no, we actually want that transactional business. That's where the margins are, that's where the business is. But consumers aren't going that way. And if you look at music and think that music is maybe, 6, 7, 8 years ahead of, where movies are in home entertainment, there's some cause for some concern. And so I think, studios have to, I think as Ted was saying, be able to adapt and adjust, because you can only hold back the market and do so much when the market's just going to run you over. And so I think if we have to do that, we have to prepare for that. That's thinking about systems. IT and systems in the studios were, kind of like an afterthought of like, oh yeah, email, I guess, yeah, we'll use email, and then, when like the BlackBerries. But now IT is a strategic asset. And to think about IT, then also think about what skills and how are you organized, and what is your organizational structure, and then how are you distributing that, and all those things kind of come into adapting for whatever model may exist.
Yeah, I think he's
It's a
trying
good
to turn
song.
it up.
Music industry.
So yeah, the point is, so if you look at music as an indicator, that could be where home entertainment's heading, or we could see a combination of subscription with some component of ownership as well. So
I think you've got you can draw parallels and you can draw differences, I think, to the music business. I worked for Universal in 2001 when when Apple came out. We were the largest music company in the world. We had bought the largest music company in the world, therefore we were the largest. And they were definitely head in the sand of, oh no, people won't actually buy it. And I think from one respect, you've seen a shift from the studios or the content owners over to the consumers. So it used to be, I've got 12 songs, I'm going to put a couple of good songs on there, and then I'm just going to cram a bunch of crap on there because I know you'll buy it, because you'll buy it for that one song. Then it shifted to, well, this is the one song that I want, but people are willing to buy that one. Probably 5 times as many people are willing to buy that one song rather than buy the entire album. I think part of the difference is that a song is a very small consumable unit. It's 3.5 minutes long on average. A TV show is 22 to 44 minutes long. A movie is hour and a half, hour 40. So there's some differences there, but I can certainly see some parallels of that shift in power from the content owner to the consumer. And we're becoming more of a consumer-based. It's the old I want what I want on any device. Our key is, like Jake was saying, technology is not just an enabler, it's a driver in a lot of those areas. So how do you make that available on any device? The key for us as intellectual property owners, the bad guys, I guess some people see, is we need to make money off of it, because it's not just the big bad wolf and they're trying to bring you down. That's how we support this entire industry. And when you look at Southern California, besides tourism, entertainment is the number one industry. You steal music, you're stealing it from a band, and that band, if everybody's ever been in a band,
Or even a baker that
those guys are looking
bakes
for
the
the next
pastries.
McDonald's,
Yeah.
food. So you're really taking money out of their mouths. So I think there's that balance of making the content available, again, on any device, anytime that you want, at a reasonable price. And I think that's
which is no small feat.
it's no small feat, and making it a high quality experience, because you can go down the corner in downtown LA and get some guy that camcorded a movie, but you see people stand up and heads, and you hear chatter and somebody eating popcorn. Okay, well, maybe the $1 is for a really low quality, maybe not so bad, but we probably can't sell it for $24.99. So it's got to be somewhere in between.
Mark, do you have something to add to that?
Scott really hit a few of the key points. Maybe just to add on for a second, it's an interesting question to look at the parallels with music, and you can definitely contrast them and draw some interesting similarities. Just by way of guesses from the audience, if you were to look at sales of music, how many are still physical versus how many are digital? What would the percent split be? Anyone venture to guess?
Revenue or units?
Revenue.
Both
Both.
is.
Yeah, so if you were to look at a units perspective, it's actually about 50-50. It's actually 51% are digital, you know,
Wow.
versus 49% are physical. So it's interesting, right? It's interesting to kind of look at that and think about that. Here we are 15 years later, yet you still have such a physical, you know, presence in that business. You know, revenues is a different story because, you know, buy one unit versus, but still, it's an interesting thing to look at. The home entertainment business, I mean, this has been the interesting question that a lot of the executives on this panel are really, you know, looking at, struggling with, thinking through, really getting their teams to kind of think through, which is, you know, when you had the home entertainment business in such a large sell-through, you know, when all of us were buying those Blu-rays and those DVDs, you know, you had a lot of margin to work with, you know, and now that that's not there, you
So we used to
really-
fund all of the studio's projects. As long as we get home entertainment to be one of the sponsors, it's like gold. It's like the latest and greatest. And that completely changed during the recession, but that was nice. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And so now that that's not the case, what does this look like? We like to call, one of the strategy groups that I work with very closely likes to call the next 10 years the decade of the customer, you know, in this business. They kind of coined that the next 10 years. And I think there's something to that. You know, we're really driving this, you know, how we consume content, where we consume content. It's hard to know where theatrical is going, especially with all the D-Cinema investments. I think you were referencing, Scott, the 100 or so D-Cinema screens a day that are coming out in China. A lot of very interesting stuff there. But if I kind of look at it and take a step back, I say to myself, okay, you know, I think that the sell-through business has just fundamentally changed. I'm not sure I see those numbers ever coming back. But I think the pay-per-view, the subscription, the XVOD, you know, if we want to call it that, because there's many different forms of it, I think that's where companies have to kind of match their investment in content relative to the price point and how they window it and how they introduce it. So, you know, we'll see on music, but, you know, we've been kind of predicting the death of physical for, you know, the better part of about 7 or 8 years in music, and it just continues to hold strong, at least for now.
So actually, I'll use that segue into the big opportunities. The next topic is the big opportunities in the near future, right? And I think this is kind of related to here's where we think it might go. And this is going to be interesting because I actually don't know what the answers are going to come from each one of you. So
Neither do we.
Yeah. Exactly. So maybe tee it off with Mark, and then we'll go down the line. Okay. Crystal ball.
You know, I think I kind of definitely would weave some of this into the next conversation around some of the future stuff, right? But I think what you've got is you've got these business models that are just fundamentally changing, you know, and so there's been a few references to China, and China's interesting because while the gross box office may be high, you know, the rev share, the split of what the studio gets, I think is still, you know, something that, you know, needs to be relooked at or, you know, kind of renegotiated. But when you look at these business models, it's pretty amazing. So let me weave a supply chain concept into a consumer concept to make my point. So today, when, and I'll just, you know, pick, you know, Fox or Sony or Warner, any one of these studios, they have a sales team, and that sales team will go out to, you know, the AMC in Burbank, and they'll cut a deal, right? Okay, you're going to play this movie on this many screens. There's people involved, there's a process involved, there's a supply chain involved. That's really how the process works today. When you start looking at Asia, and you start looking at these markets, and you look at how they're just, China surpassed the US in terms of D-Cinema penetration sometime late last year. They're saying, wow, you know, does it really have to work that way? And so one of the things that I'm hearing a lot from a lot of exhibition, primarily in Asia, is what they're looking to do is they're looking to say, why don't we just sell tickets for anything and everything we can? And so if Avengers is scheduled to play tonight at 7, it may play on 1 screen or it may play on 10 screens. It depends on how many we sell. And so that's a fascinating model to think about from a supply chain perspective, because what that suggests is that you've got, you know, kind of near real-time, if not real-time delivery and unlocking, you know, of that content, you know, for those screens. It also kind of suggests from a business model perspective that the middle-of-the-road movies, the low-budget movies, it's almost like you're having your flight canceled, right? You ever, you know, hopped on a Southwest flight and there was only 6 of you around and you had kind of a mechanical issue all of a sudden, and it's kind kind of the same thing, right? And so it's really interesting to really consider that, right? It's like, okay, you know, what if the model we see emerging in Asia were to transpire in Europe and in the US? It kind of suggests the big tentpoles, you know, are kind of the future, at least for the theatrical side, and that some of the other content is going to be distributed, you know, in other ways and other vehicles in a more cost-effective way. So I think for me, that's probably one of the biggest kind of challenges and opportunities that I'm currently working with a couple of my clients on.
Great. And Jake, we can add on to it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when we think like what we think the opportunities are. I mean, when I said like, you know, some of it we don't really know. I mean, that's sort of true in a way where, you know, we're in it day in day and we can kind of see, you know, the different shifts and micro trends and things like that. But really, and this is kind of how I think about what I do, is I can make a guess as to where we think the business is going to go and develop a strategy around that. And that strategy is what technology, what capabilities, what people, what skills do I need in place in order to, if I believe that to be true, that's what's going to happen, and that's what I'm going to be positioned to be able to address. And so if we look at you know, just digital distribution, and Scott and Ted, you know, kind of rattling off, you know, iTunes and Amazon and Xbox and, you know, all these different channels. And there's even, you know, micro channels that have micro audiences, and how do you serve all those different groups? It's really how you position yourself as a company, and what systems do you have in place to make it easy to be able to address those markets, or make it easier. Because right now it's still, you know, even though we're in this digital world and that's been going on for many years, a lot of business is still done on Excel spreadsheets and people emailing stuff around. I mean, you'd think there'd be a little more sophistication. So that level of sophistication needs to come up. And then on the flip side, I think, you know, part of what Mark was talking about is really looking at the consumer behavior. I mean, that sort of just-in-time delivery of movies based on demand in China, I mean, that's all sort of this data-driven, you know, a data-driven process. And so you need those people to be able to, you know, get that data, look at that data, and then be able to recommend an action of which way you should go. And those are the kind of the skill sets. You know, the traditional studio executive was, you know, people who just, you know, had the intuition and the gut instinct, and, you know, just, you know, were lucky or successful or sometimes unlucky. Now it's really about, you know, what is the data telling me, and how can I translate that into an action that meets strategy.
And we're actually seeing that common theme. Even we had SAP in on another panel talking about enterprise resource planning, what type of skill sets. It's really the data analytics. To people who have strong, you know, operational experience and domain knowledge, it's really the data analytics. Those are the people that is really needed, and they're going to be the highly paid and all that. And it seems pretty consistent even on the studio side.
So how can you know, content be readily available for people to consume it, both B2B and business to consumer? Metadata. You know, there's all this data about, you know, there's data about data, right? And there's all this metadata that goes along with the content. How can you expose that in a way that anyone can take that? And we don't know where the next, you know, startup or the new service or the new thing is going to come out if we don't make it easy for them to be able to consume that and use it in a, you know, in an appropriate and legal way. So I think those are like the enabling things that, again, I talk about kind of, you know, technology as a strategic asset, IT as a strategic asset. I think those are going to unlock those opportunities that we don't yet know of.
Ted?
So two things and two thoughts, and it's, you know, really interesting to hear other points of view as well. The second, I'll start with the number two, and then probably my biggest focus would be number one, but non-theatrical revenue in some of these international markets is a huge, huge opportunity for us. So we talk a lot about the box office in China, Russia, and India, but our profits in our business, 70% is derived from non-theatrical revenue, and that's really our opportunity. We talked about 1 billion iPads and iPhones that are now available. That's going to be our format and our opportunity to monetize our content in these emerging markets. iTunes is going to move into China momentarily. You're just starting to see the first of the deals with some of the local Chinese players now in Hollywood studios, getting our content directly to the consumer on these screens. We're going to skip the satellite infrastructure, skip the cable infrastructure, go straight to the consumer on these new devices.
Oh, wow.
And that's our opportunity. And we're going to be able to do it faster and more efficiently than ever before. And hopefully we'll be able to build up that revenue stream, which has been such a profit and a cash cow here in the United States. So that's one opportunity there. The second is kind of closer to home for me, literally. is moving our windows up to theatrical for our digital business. And for me, with a 14-month-old baby, there were 6 movies this summer that I was dying to see, and I saw 0 of them in the theaters because we just can't do it. Too much time, too crazy at home. And I would have certainly paid a premium if I could watch those movies at home. When I do the math and I say 2 movie tickets in Los Angeles, plus a babysitter, plus a box of popcorn, we're way north of $100 right there. So 30, 40, whatever it would be to pay to see that movie that I wanted to see, easy math decision for us.
Yeah, my wife would have made me watch Twilight with her. I know it.
Some of you may not want to see in public, but you still want to watch. So it's really an opportunity for us. The exhibition community is fighting it tooth and nail. We have to realize that we're all in this ecosystem together, and they're not going to have the quality of movies in their theaters if we can't monetize them the way we need to monetize them. We've lost our physical revenue stream or a large part of it, and we need to find another system that works. And we're not stupid. We're not going to cannibalize something that we know is a good revenue stream for us today, but we have to make a compelling consumer proposition. People want our movies.
Yeah.
They don't want to go to the theater for some reason, or they can't, or they've just not done it. We need to be able to serve them with a model that works, and we'll find something in the next couple years that does that. Hopefully it'll be a peaceful settlement or not, I don't know. But I'm personally looking forward to that one day.
That's awesome. I didn't know about that. Hey, Scott?
Yeah, kind of wrapping up a lot of the pieces here. I think that historically, a studio has had very little insight or contact directly with the consumer of their product, which is really an interesting concept. Theaters, we book into a theater. The theater sells it to the consumer. We don't have much data other than what the theater tells us about how many people came through the turnstiles and how much they paid. We don't have any direct connection. We don't have any marketing. We really don't have any good data about that other than here's how many tickets, at what time, in what theater, possibly on what screen. In the home entertainment window, again, we sell to Walmart, we sell to Target, we sell to Toys R Us, HMV, Tesco, whoever it is across the globe, but we don't have that insight in the metrics. And then from a television point of view, again, we sell to a broadcast, cable, premium, whoever it is. They're broadcasting out to someone. They know what that contact looks like. So I agree with Jake that consumer insights and that better understanding of truly who our consumer is, which is pretty funny for an industry that's about 100 years old to say, we don't really know who our customers are. Well, we know who our customers are. We don't know much about our consumers. For a business that's been that successful for 100 years, to be able to say that is pretty astonishing. So I think that we're getting that closer and closer contact through technology, as Ted was talking about. So we're getting better data about when you're downloading or watching a movie on your iPad, ultraviolet or rental or SD electronic sell-through, any of those different media. But really to better understand that consumer and not necessarily to pander to them, but to really optimize. So Warner Brothers is the owner of Harry Potter. 8 movies, 7 books turned into 8 movies for Harry Potter. I'm waiting for that day. And the new spin-off coming up soon. Actually just started production recently. But think about the new Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. There's probably a lot of Potterheads that are really excited about going to see that. Well, if we knew who those consumers were and we could market to them, it would be really pretty exciting. We opened up a studio in Leavesden, a little bit northwest of London, that's all about Harry Potter. That's actually where they filmed the Harry Potter series.
Wow.
And I've been there a couple times. It's pretty amazing. If you're all over Harry Potter, it is the place to be. They've got all the sets. It's this giant. It's 2 sound stages. So it's a funny little thing. There's 11 sound stages in Leavesden. A through I are the ones that they're still shooting, and then J and K are the ones that they use, and people go J.K. Rowling, so we actually named it after her. But if we could better understand that connection at Leavesden, what they do is when you buy a ticket, and you can't just walk up and buy a ticket to Leavesden and walk in, you've got to have a reservation. They have trains that end there. We're geofencing, so when you get off the train and you're taking the shuttle bus from the train station in, things are popping up on your cell phone about, hey, we're really excited to have you here. Here's some things to watch for the next 2.5 minutes as your shuttle bus comes through. You go through, they're constantly sending you very targeted messages. When you leave, it's kind of a reminder and some kind of behind the scenes type of thing. So it's really, it's that full experience, that end-to-end experience, I think is really important.
I think that's a
Taking
tremendous trend to hear, which is
Yeah.
more to direct that relationship.
Right.
So we have about 5 minutes,
Okay.
and then I'm going to transition to Jake in terms of advice on what do we need from students, the vendors, and all of those things. So, Jake.
You know, we talked a lot about data and data science, and certainly the, the studios in recent years have, are much more keen on working with data as a means of helping drive strategic decisions. But really, I think, the skills that I look for when I'm hiring are multidiscipline. People who can, make a spreadsheet hum, but then come back with, what does that actually mean? And so, be able to traverse between, quantitative and qualitative, and do that easily and be able to sort of, that communication piece is really essential. And, we look for people who can connect the dots. They can kind of see the bigger picture, not just the one thing that they're specialized in. And so, everyone has a specialty, whether it's, finance or IT or, computer science or marketing or business, but people who are, again, kind of have that multidiscipline view, kind of your traditional MBA, I guess. Like those are the skills that I think the studios need more and more, and to really help, drive strategy. So,
Ted?
I guess for me, I like to start with folks that have an analytical base. I think you kind of need that sort of fundamentally, whatever you do in your career. And I like to see that someone has that skill. I think the second thing is to get someone that can take those analytics and be able to bring them to a higher level to actually communicate their ideas in kind of written form. I think that's very important for what we do. And then I think most important for people in my group is to be able to communicate those ideas as well. And you can be the smartest guy in the room, but if you're not compelling and you can't communicate your ideas effectively and can't get the other side to share your point of view, you're going to effectively be worthless. And it's funny because we do a lot of focus groups with college students, and I think that one art form is getting more and more rare these days, just that verbal communication skill set.
But I'll
and
text you
that's
the
always been very
presentation. What
important.
do you mean?
Exactly. So it's very important for us, and love hiring MBAs as well.
Scott?
Very similar. Again, I think it's all about analytics, about not just gathering data. I think that you'll see studios outsourcing the transactional types of activities. So if your focus was, take this from your inbox and do something and put it in your outbox, those jobs are getting outsourced, BPO, or pushed to a third party. It's really the ability to take that data and figure out what the heck it means and what to do with it and be able to communicate it across.
Mark?
I promise not to make it a lecture. So,
I'll give you my drink tickets. I'm sorry.
okay. How I like to think about this is, imagine a continuum. And on the left-hand side, you have, commodity. On the right-hand side, you have rocket science. And no matter where you start, you're going to go to the left rapidly. So, today's rocket science is tomorrow's gray hair, is, Friday's procedurals, is Sunday's commodity. And so what I really look for, and I think our firm really looks for, are people who are constantly willing to kind of rethink and reapply and reimagine how to get things done. It's almost for the math and statistical people in the room, think of it almost like an asymptotic relationship, where you can, even though you think you've wired it and you've gotten all the efficiency you wanted of something, you can actually get halfway closer, never quite touches, right? You can always get more and more and more efficient. And so people who are analytically curious, people certainly have the right educational background and foundation, I think is key, but people who just are unwilling to kind of accept, hey, yes, at some point you got to draw a line, say this is good enough, we need to head on to version 2. But I think when you get into a mode of where you're not willing to kind of challenge yourself or allow yourself to be challenged on some of your thinking, I think you're headed down a really dangerous path.
Okay, great. time. So thank you very much for attending. I would like to thank the panelists. That was just incredible. So I think that concludes the session. For part 2, come next year at the next summit. We'll have a couple more sessions. So pre-buy now.